that way. Okay. And I know Dana's been working really, really hard. We've met as a group as well to discuss a person-centered ISP, and Dana would like to share with us where she's at on that.
Good morning, all. So I sent it to Tamara and Leslie, I believe, the questions that I have developed for HCBS. What I did was in right after or right before the Tom Pomerantz meeting, my coworker Danny Esparza, he's the administrator for the Mars homes here in Bakersfield. We were talking about our current ISP. So after that, we saw we had a ISP or IPP from CVRC. So I took the HCBS rules, and I don't know, can you share the questions, Tamara?
I wasn't prepared to, but I can. Let me stop this share while you're talking and I'll pull them up.
Okay. So what I did was I went through the HCBS rules and through the CVRC ISP and created, there's probably about 20 or 30 questions for the individuals to ask prior to the ISP. And then I have taken the Mars ISP and the other ISPs from the agencies here in Bakersfield, and I have kind of married them together. I'm not ready to share that yet because it's still really raw, but I am ready to share the question.
Okay, let me share it. Hold on one second. I just downloaded it again.
Can hear.
You can't hear? Can everybody else hear?
Okay, here now.
Okay. Okay, one second. I'm gonna share this. Share screen. Share.
Yes.
All right. There we go.
So these are pretty basic questions. That just kind of go with PCT, client rights, HCBS. I'm not sure if I want to put them in some sort of, if we want to put them in some sort of Word document or how we want to present this, but I thought that other people would be interested in it. Did I spell things wrong?
It's okay. That's why it's highlighting it in red, because it wants you to spell things differently. But that's okay. We can still read it.
Spelling is not my forte.
That's okay.
So we took when Tamara and I met, we took this document and added to it. We've added things to it. So I think it's pretty ready to share until we figure out how we want to present this to our individuals. And some of these questions may not be appropriate for some of our 6,500 clients, but I think they still should be asked in some way.
One second.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just so that for some of the people who may not know, a 6,500 is a section of the California legal code, which is somebody who's been found to be dangerous to themselves or others and has been placed in a sort of restricted setting, basically for their own treatment. And so they have less rights to make decisions about their lives.
Right.
So, I don't know where this group wants to go with it, but I am open. I'm also open to sharing my really, really, really rough draft of the ISP. If you want to see it, it's pretty rough.
There were two pieces of legislation that were just went through. Last week was the last week in which the California legislature was in session. and there were two bills related to regional center services. One of them, AB 1147, which would have made some major
They're on
changes,
the printer.
which would have made some major changes to the system, and ended up getting put into the suspense file, which means it's not going to be, they're not going to bring it forward this year. The other bill did pass and is waiting for the governor's approval. And among the things that are in those, were in both of those bills, and the one that's still existing, is some standardization of the IPP format for a couple of different things. One is to try to get it to greater person-centered planning. So this tool would be a really good way to help do that. And the other thing too is they're looking at how they go about making sure that persons of color receive equal services to Anglo individuals in the system. So there's a big push to sort of more standardize what an IPP will look like through the 21 regional centers. Because right now you have 21 regional centers and you have 22 different ways of doing things. So things like this, which would help create a way of teasing out the information that we want to receive from clients to make sure that it's their plan. Because some individuals you sit down with and you say, okay, what would you like? And they just can rattle off, all kinds of things. Some of them realistic, some of them not so realistic. Other folks, I don't know. What do you think I should have? So we want to make sure that we're doing things with questions that get the individual involved in their own process. And so this is excellent work, Dana.
Thank you. And that was kind of my thinking, is that some vendors might appreciate having a ISP that looks similar to another one, or has, because even when I took another company from inside the 4 businesses that are in the same building, theirs looked completely different, but I liked it. So yeah.
And I also think it would be easier for, as a service coordinator, to have them look fairly similar. Then you always know what information you're going to get and the format that it's going to come in. I hear comments frequently about like, oh, I really like how you guys leave all 4 quarters on your annual review, things like that, because there's just such a drastic difference among agencies the way we submit it. So.
Well, and one of the issues that that's going to need to be addressed is, if we have at Mars, and we have resident adult ARFs, and then we have the EBSH, and then we have Ames Homes, Ames Consulting, and as one. So what my goal is that we'll create one template, and then those companies can take out what doesn't apply. So like the EBSH, which is an extra behavior support, and they have one-on-one staff, they have a FERB, or they have a special report that has a lot of information in it, but doesn't have the HCBS stuff.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I think that you're doing a wonderful job. You had already had so much of this done prior to us meeting as a group. So I think you're doing a wonderful job leading the way. Is anyone else working on anything like this?
Tamara, could you go up to the top of it?
Yeah.
So how do you get your wants and needs communicated? What is your preferred communication language? So right off the bat, figuring out what's the best way to talk to the person. And then getting into basic things. What makes you happy? What makes you mad? What do you like to do when you're at home by yourself with others? So it's asking the person specific questions about who they are and what's important to them and what's important for them. So it really sort of helps the individual answer questions, because if you say, okay, so what do you like in your plan? That's like too much. this breaks it down into very discrete questions that can be asked to help somebody communicate how they will be happy in your group home, in your day program. You know, so what do we, how can we work together as a team to make it so that this is a good environment for you and that the services that you're receiving are what you want?
Right. Yeah, and I think compared to, you know, that little needs and services appraisal section that we get with a referral, this is way more information. And I feel like the individual would love the opportunity to, you know, give us that information themselves rather than for a service coordinator who may or may not know them very well to fill in that little box. At least it's going to be more useful coming from the individual.
Right.
So I think it's a wonderful job. Okay, everyone good with
So
me?
now we just need to figure out how we want this to look when we present it.
So you mean to the individual?
To the individual or to other vendors?
Thoughts? Anyone? I
Well,
mean, go ahead, Jeff.
again, this is a tool. There are other tools out there as well. I think what we want to do with our vendor community is to provide them with choices, just like we want our clients to have choices, and for folks to figure out which tool works the best for their particular facility. Now, if you don't have a tool or you're not sure where to find them, I think this is a good
Right,
tool to use, but I don't think we want to lock people into one, unless that's something that administratively from the regional center, that they make a decision that everybody has to use the same document. But as it stands right now, everybody's an independent business, and you can use whatever means that you want. But it's like you can get on Google Maps, and sometimes it shows you 4 different ways you can get to the same location. You know,
right,
the issue is we want to get to that location.
right. But how, I mean, Dana, if you're just asking what the best way to share it is, I feel like, you know, we could create a form, but it needs to be in an editable format, you know, so even just keeping it in Word so people can copy and paste what they need. Or, you know, because like you said, it's not going to apply for every situation. Every agency isn't going to need all of the questions, and some of them may not be appropriate.
That's true.
So maybe whatever format you choose, I think that it needs to be editable. And then what's the best avenue to share it? I feel like maybe even presenting it to community services and letting them send it out through Constant Contact or something. I mean, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but
Yeah.
that seems.
Yes.
I think why don't we go ahead and next week at our vendor advisory meeting, which is next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. As part of I'm on the agenda, and so why don't we go ahead and present it to the larger group as part of my agenda item, Tamara.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. I can add you for that. I already have you on the list, so that's
Right.
good.
So we'll give Dana a few minutes. So again, in like looking at this tool, there are other options here at the Bakersfield ARC. We've sort of gone a slightly different way in that we are contracting with Thera, which is and we're creating an electronic record. So we hopefully in the next year or two will not have any paper records at all, and everything will be in the cloud.
Yeah.
So
My
that's
agency uses a company called CareWin.
Yeah,
Like-
there are 4 or 5. There's Case Man. There's a few others. There is a cost involved. Most of them charge you per client,
Yeah,
or for a group of clients, and then you pay a fee for the service of being able to have an electronic record.
yeah, for sure.
We use their app exclusively in all of our Visalia homes use their app, and our EBSH here in Bakersfield
Okay,
uses their app.
Yeah. Um,
You know what? This could be put into a TheraP document
yeah,
and
yeah.
filled out.
Uh-huh.
yeah, it could. It totally could. You could make it an electronic document. I'm gonna stop sharing. Is everybody okay with me stopping share? So I can
Okay.
get, okay. All right, that way I can open up. Let me, there we go. Oh, wait. So I first wanted to, I had this up and then I got away from it. 1 second. All right, let me open this other one. Okay. Okay, I wanted to give like a refresher on the original training that we did. We had so much, we never even went over it. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were talking about, in the original training about what is important to teach and how we can teach those skills. And on this one for the community of practice, and we talked about a task analysis. I remember clearly that we did that, but I think it's the end. And then, providing the assistance from least to most assistance, because if we jump in and we're providing the most right out the gate, we don't know where that individual, what their level of skill is. So this community of practice I did focus is more on, positive behavior support, which is at the end of this. And we didn't make it all the way through, but it is important to remember that all behavior is a form of communication. I had this conversation recently with a family. Let's say the issue was that the individual kept breaking an electronic device, and the family's response is to hurry and bring over a new electronic device because, that's what that's her entertainment. Okay. And so the issue with that is if we continue to do that, that individual will continue to communicate by breaking this electronic device because that's what has got her needs met. She wants a new device. She's going to break it. They're going to bring it right over. And so we have to work on those things and learn to teach replacement skills and behaviors. And so that's what this the second half of this training was, if you guys remember. I talked a lot about the history of behavior support and how we just in the past thought that if we grouped people with similar challenges together, that it would work out, but it didn't work out. What happened when we did that in the past was that they learned new behaviors from each other. If they didn't speak and we put them with other people who didn't speak, they learned not to communicate. If we group the autistic community together, they learn new autistic behaviors. And so this is why it's so important to promote community inclusion and not just create these little communities of people with developmental disabilities. Okay, let me see. So we talked a little bit about developing a positive behavior plan and the ways that you do that. So identifying quality of life areas that may be lacking, which is the tool that Dana just shared with you, is one of the ways that we can do that. By talking with the individual, we can learn so much. I have to figure out who's unmuted. I'm sorry, it's bothering me. I don't know who it is. I'm gonna mute you, Jeff, just in case oh no, it's not you. Okay, you can unmute though if you need to. So like using the tools like Dana just shared, that's one way that we can identify those quality of life areas that may be lacking. And then it's also important that we identify exactly what the challenging behavior is and what it looks like. You know, not just they threw a fit or they were having a tantrum. Really, what does that fit or that tantrum look like? Is it kicking, screaming, biting, threatening? You know, and how long does it last and how intense is it? Identifying antecedents, things that happen before the behavior, things that we know as behavioral triggers. And then any other events that may be influencing behavior. Perhaps, you know, another individual living in the home had visitors and got to go out into the community with visitors. That may be triggering for someone else. And then identify any consequences that follow the behavior. And the reason that's important is because the consequences of the behavior may actually be reinforcing the behavior, right? I tell us this story when I teach this class, and I had an individual living in my residential facility. He was there for a few months. We never had any elopement or AWOL behavior. One night he took off. He said he wasn't coming back. I lived fairly close, so I hopped in the car and went and got him. When I went and got him, he finally got in the car. We drove to Starbucks to have a chat, right? Tell me what's going on. He didn't want to go back to the facility, so I took him to Starbucks. We were there for probably 30, 45 minutes. He felt better, took him back to the facility. About 2 weeks went by. He elopes again. This time I told staff, go and follow him, bring him back, let me know if you need help. When the staff caught up with him, he said, no, you tell Tammy to come. And I said, he wants to go to Starbucks and we're not doing that. Like, we're not reinforcing this behavior. And so sometimes we are giving consequences that may be positive for the behavior in the eyes of the individual. Identify the individual's learning characteristics. And that's important because if we don't know how they best learn, we're not going to know the best way to teach replacement skills. Teach to the individual's strengths and identify the possible reasons for any challenging behavior. And then you can start talking to your team about ideas of what possible replacement behaviors are. Probably the most simple story I ever heard of a replacement behavior was I was in a training over in Las Vegas. And it was for nonviolent crisis intervention certification. So we were going around introducing ourselves, and for whatever reason, we were talking about replacement skills and behaviors at this point. And these two teachers, they worked at a preschool in Arizona. I want to say there was 3 or 4 classrooms working with children with special needs, 3 and 4-year-olds. And they had a kid that would run out the door, climb up the tree, and sit in the tree. So they would have to call the fire department to come over. They'd have to evacuate the whole building because that's the policy if the fire department was there. So now there's a whole audience outside on the grass, and they'd get this kid out of the tree. And so they said that what they did was finally cleared out a corner in the room with crepe paper, created a paper tree in that corner. Branches went out onto the walls. And they wrote the kid's name. I don't remember his name. Let's just say his name was Joshua, right? So Joshua's corner, whatever. And they taught him that when he was feeling bad, like he needed to escape, this was his safe place. So that worked because it was a more socially acceptable way of getting his needs met. He needed some solitude, right? Needed to be alone. And it worked better than the challenging behavior did. But there's some things that come along with that, like if they were to let other kids interrupt his time in that corner, he would be back in the tree. You guys kind of follow what I'm saying? So when we're looking at possible replacement behaviors, we need to really bring in like the key people who know the individual the best, which is the DSPs. And I feel like that's a huge mistake that a lot of us make, right? We all consider ourselves as like the management members, the professionals, right? We've been doing this long time. We know what we're doing, but we may not know the individual the best. So we really need to pull in the people who do when it comes to identifying replacement behaviors. Okay, so I'm not going to elaborate on those. I'm just going to start. I wanted to just give you a refresher of that original behavior or a presentation. So sorry. I don't even know what I'm saying. So today I've prepared this presentation. I'm so glad there's several people because I spent a lot of time on it. And last time we met the day that school started and we did not have a large crowd, which I completely understand. And so we postponed it till today. So this goes along with HCBS right to be treated well. And the goal of today's meeting is to form community of practice. So I have lots of things to talk about, but what I'm really hoping is that as we start discussing them, you guys will engage in the conversation because really it's our community of practice, right? How are we as a group going to handle the issues of oops, sorry guys, of positive behavior support and successful teaching. How are we going to do that? I am so sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. All right, so slide 3. Okay, so the notes that I have here, I have lots of bullet points here. So positive behavior support focuses on improving the overall quality of life for individuals with developmental disabilities. By addressing challenging behaviors and promoting positive ones, individuals can experience increased independence, social engagement, and participation in meaningful activities. And I just want to say that whole phrase, meaningful activities, I feel like we really need to talk about what that means. It's not going to be the same for every person. And I feel like it's something that we kind of get looped into. Well, they're going out, like they just went to Wendy's for dinner. That's not a meaningful activity in the community. And so I think that as a provider, that's one thing that I can say we could all be better at, right? Looking at what is important to this specific individual and figuring out what is meaningful to them, right? So things like that tool that Dana shared could help us with that. Positive behavior support is tailored to the unique needs, preferences, strengths, and goals of each individual. It respects their dignity and empowers them to make their own choices, fostering a sense of control over their lives. And I think that when we do see challenging behavior, at times it stems from feeling like there's no control, right? You'd probably see some pretty bad behavior from me if I felt like I didn't have control over my own life. So, needs to be person-centered. In reducing challenging behaviors, individuals with developmental disabilities may engage in challenging behaviors due to communication difficulty, sensory issues, or frustration. Positive behavior support aims to identify the underlying causes of these behaviors and provide, who is that? I cannot see. And provide, I lost my spot, I'm so sorry. Strategies to minimize or eliminate them, leading to a more peaceful and inclusive environment. And you guys, please jump in whenever you have thoughts. Effective positive behavior support can prevent unnecessary institutionalization by allowing individuals to live in the least restrictive community placements. Like we know that those developmental centers are going away. We know that, but still, if we can implement positive behavior support plans, we may be able to get people out of the EBSH and into a more appropriate, less restrictive living environment. So, you know, this promotes integration, social connections, and a sense of belonging. Positive behavior support fosters positive interactions between individuals with developmental disabilities and their peers, staff, family members, and the community. This inclusion contributes to improve social skills, relationships, and overall well-being. I know I tell this story a lot. I know an individual who could not order off of a menu. And these are things that we take for granted, right? Like we just go to a restaurant and we order off a menu. But going out into the community with an individual and learning that they didn't know how to order off of a menu became like a personal goal for me, right? What do you mean you don't know how to order off a menu? You have to learn how to do this. No, you just decide for me. No, I'm not. We're going to learn this together, right? We're going to do this together. You're going to learn. You need this skill. So
You probably hadn't been exposed to it
well,
or given the opportunity.
yes, given the opportunity. What was said was, when I go out, my dad orders for me. So, you know, I'll eat whatever you eat, or whatever was something like that was the attitude. And I was like, oh no, we're going to learn to do this. This is important. And you know, when we teach DSP, there's a really good example. Like, is it more important for someone to learn to name the months in the calendar, like January through December, or is it more important to teach them how to greet someone appropriately? What are they going to use more? What's more relevant? Let's teach the skills that are relevant. Okay. Supporting caregivers. Residential staff, family members, and caregivers play a vital role in implementing positive behavior support strategies. By training and supporting individuals, positive behavior support equips them with effective tools to provide the best care and possible support. Positive behavior support emphasizes skill building and independence. By teaching individuals alternate behaviors and functional skills, they can engage in activities that they enjoy and achieve personal goals. It's also, of course, where we need to be in compliance with regulation. So in California, Title 17 and Title 22 emphasize the importance of providing safe and supportive environments for individuals with developmental disabilities. Positive behavior support aligns with these regulations by focusing on person-centered care, safety, and behavior management. Positive behavior support aims for sustained long-term improvements in behavior and quality of life. It's not just about managing behaviors in the moment, but about creating lasting positive change. And I feel like that is so important, right? Like when we're having these frequent, very disruptive behaviors, we focus on taking care of it right then and pushing off, like, let's come up with a solid plan, because you think that maybe it's not going to happen, or maybe you can teach, you know, in an unstructured environment. But truly, we need a solid plan with all of the players involved to provide the best support to the individual. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Like, what is the best? When do we call and say, you know, we really need to get the assistance of implementing a positive behavior support plan? Like, when do we make that call? How often, how long do you go experiencing the behaviors before we say we really need to do this as a team?
Well, you should probably do it immediately after the event, because you need to be always analyzing what's happening.
Right. I mean, but then immediately after the event, let's say they just moved in, immediately after the event, it could just be like, oh, well, they're in transition and it was a one-time thing. Like, how do you know when the right time is to say, we really need, like, do we wait for someone to get hurt? That's not appropriate in my mind, right? So it's like, what should we do? And I'm a big fan of, like, immediately emailing the service coordinator and starting, like, documentation. Now, I know Jeff mentioned TheraP. I'm sure TheraP has this capability too.
GREs.
Yeah, the system that we use has, like, date timestamp notes. And so we will enter those notes, you know, in the client file, and then I'll be able to pull, like, a report from date to date and send it over to the service coordinator and say, look, this is what we've been dealing with. We really need some assistance here. The problem with that is that I don't know. I mean, and I have a recent situation where you're not met with the same urgency as you're sending the information with, right? Like, I may feel like this really needs to happen and sending it over to the regional center, and then it may not be responded or may not feel as urgent to them as it is to us, right? The ones dealing with the issue. And so I'm not sure how that's why we really were saying, like, we would love to have heavy concentration of regional center people in these HCBS community of practice meetings, is because some of the things we could do very well and very efficiently, but then on the other side, it almost feels like it depends on who receives that information, what kind of attention it gets. Do you guys know what I'm saying? So how do we address that? Am I alone in that thought?
So just to relate, like, I do share some of like the areas where we could improve within our community services department to help relate to case management to support in that area. And so I could definitely support you in that area of trying to build that continuity of just that communication when you guys identify a concern that they help in working with you on identifying urgency level. It's like, okay, this is a concern, let's raise it to like the next phase of how we could support you, trying to figure out a plan, because I know that's often the hardest part, is trying to figure out what do we do after we have this information, like how can we best support, and that starts that dialogue again. So I would also encourage you to share with them, like, hey, I have this concern, let's work out a plan to address this. It is urgent because these are identifying issues that could develop a little bit more, and just sharing with that so that you could build that dialogue, because many of the times you often have new service coordinators coming in that might need that support, and you could say, hey, talk to your program manager about this concern, see what you could develop. That way you kind of give them a little push in the direction of how you guys could formulate a plan together.
Right. Yeah. And I also think it's us too, because I feel like maybe we're inconsistent as well. So I see it's both sides. It's not just regional center. I'm just saying that creates a perfect storm. If we're not sure when to bring it to the table, and then once we are fed up and we're frustrated and we finally send it and it doesn't get that immediate like attention, it's a perfect storm for this to just get out of hand. So yeah, but thank you.
One of the things that we do here at the Bakersfield ARC is we have we call it monthly safety committee meeting. And we review all of the SIRs, GREs that occurred during that month. Now, clearly, if there's anything that has to do with health and safety, we're getting it over to the regional center immediately and working with them and developing the plan. But we're also looking at trends that we're seeing. And not only are we doing this with our clients, so that maybe we see a pattern that over the last 6 months, Susie's had a similar incident 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Because it's starting to show up, consistently in the safety meeting. We're also looking at workman's comp issues too, so that the committee not only looks at what we can do to make sure that our clients are safe and that we're addressing behaviors, but we're also looking at potential hazards in the workplace. If there's a client who's created some workman's comp issues for us related to staff or staff challenges, we have a meeting once a month where we review all reports and to see if there's any trends or other things going on within the agency.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's a fly chasing me. Okay, so lastly, positive behavior support aids in preventing burnout, because your staff are dealing with the same thing over and over and they're reporting it. And once we finally transition to dealing with a positive behavior support plan, they may feel better supported and like, okay, something's really going to happen now. I know that I've had staff in the past tell me, like, I just don't even want to come to work some days because this one individual targets me and, does all this. So by creating these positive behavior support plans, we can make our staff feel more supported, less burnout. Also, data-driven decision-making. We can make decisions based on the data that we're collecting, because when we have implemented this support plan, we, sorry, got distracted. When we implement this support plan, we're collecting data, we have documentation, we can refer back to it. And then that can guide our decisions. And then also, it involves collaboration among all stakeholders, all team members, which the teamwork ensures a more holistic approach to person-centered care. Okay, so I gotta. All right. So the core principles of positive behavior support are that it is a person-centered approach, customized just to that person. We're not going to replicate one person's plan for another plan. It focuses on the individual's strengths and their preferences, promotes teamwork, and promotes quality of life. All right, functional behavior assessments. Functional behavior assessments, if you're unfamiliar, is a systematic process used to understand the underlying causes and functions of a person's challenging behavior. It's a critical step in developing effective behavior intervention strategies, especially for individuals with developmental disabilities or other conditions that might result in challenging behavior. The functional behavior assessment process helps identify the triggers and the consequences that maintain these behaviors, allowing professionals to create targeted interventions that address the root causes rather than just the outward behavior. So functional behavior assessment focuses on why the behavior is occurring, not necessarily what the behavior is. They want the goal is to get to the root of the issue. An overview of the key concepts related to functional behavior assessment is that the process starts with data collection. So you're collecting detailed information about the individual's behaviors in the situations in which they occur and the context surrounding those behaviors. The data can be direct observations, interviews with caregivers, staff, and the individual, and any existing records and documentation that may be available. And then you're going to identify patterns. So you're going to analyze the collected data, look at patterns and trends in the individual's behavior. You may even be able to use tools like, based on the different types of data that you have, you may even be able to create those, what is the one that we just showed you? Like the scatter plots and things like that to identify trends and patterns. Just depends on how much and what type of data you have collected. The patterns might include specific triggers that precede the behaviors and the consequences that follow the behaviors. So, for example, if every time someone, has this behavior of throwing and breaking something, they get brought a new device or a new replacement toy or whatever it is, their communication could be, I'm tired of this one. I need something new and exciting. And they're going to bring it to me because it's the way it's always been, right? If we reinforce behaviors accidentally because we think, okay, well, this is their only entertainment, or this is what they prefer and they can't be without it, or it's easier for the staff. What would be easier for the staff? First of all, we're not in the business of making things easier for the staff, right? Our goals should be how to best support the individual. So if we are constantly replacing that item or, giving into that behavior, that reinforces it because it communicates to the individual, this is the appropriate way to get your needs met. So any questions about that? It's really, really difficult for families to process that thought, that they're reinforcing the behavior. And I understand why, but as a whole, it would be better for everyone if we could teach a replacement behavior, a different way to communicate. Looks like Jeff has shared. What is that, Jeff?
It's 5 things that you can do to work with your DSPs. The question was, how do you prevent burnout? And there is an organization called Relayus They're a company that does training. They offer some of the training free, some of it is at a cost, but they have done a number of things recently specific to supporting DSPs and preventing burnout. So it's a good resource, and that's one of the tools that they recently published within the last couple of weeks.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right. So hypothesis development based on the data and the patterns, professionals develop hypotheses about why the individual engages in the challenging behavior. These hypotheses typically revolve around the functions that the behavior serves for the individual. Common functions include attention seeking, escaping demands, accessing desired items, or sensory stimulation. There could be others, but those are common. Functional analysis. In some cases, a functional analysis might be conducted where controlled experiments are designed to test the hypothesis. This all depends on the individual and, who you're working with. Different antecedents and consequences are manipulated to see how they impact the occurrence of the behavior. This helps confirm or refine the understanding of the behavior's function. And then functional behavior assessments emphasize the individuality of the behavior. What triggers a behavior for one person might not be the same for another. Therefore, the assessment process takes into the account the individual's unique characteristics, preferences, and experiences. Functional behavior assessments often involve collaboration among various stakeholders, including family members, caregivers, teachers, and therapists. Gathering insights from different perspectives contributes to a more comprehensive understanding of the behavior. This will help, like, are they only doing it at day program? Are they only doing it at home? And then trying to, like, peeling back the layers of an onion, figure out why it's only happening there. Is it only happening with certain people at the day program or certain people at the facility, right? So it will kind of give insight to when and possibly why the behavior is occurring. Throughout the assessment, data collection and analysis are ongoing. Professionals track the occurrence of the behaviors, the antecedents, the consequences to validate the hypothesis and adjust interventions as needed. You're going to learn a lot through the process of person-centered planning and functional behavior analysis, because as you're testing, your theories and your thoughts, or trying different replacement skills and behaviors, you're going to learn more about the individual and possibly about the behavior, and you may need to come together as a team, discuss what you have learned so far, and then maybe make the decision to try new approaches. The information gathered from a functional behavior assessment guides the development of the behavior intervention plan. This plan outlines strategies for addressing the challenging behavior while promoting positive alternatives that serve the same function for the individual. All right. Behavior intervention plan development. So a behavior intervention plan is a structured and individualized plan that outlines strategies to address challenging behaviors while promoting positive alternatives. Developing an effective behavior intervention plan is a crucial step in the positive behavior support process. So what are we currently doing for those of us who are working with or developing behavior intervention plans? Who are we currently working with? I think it's different for everybody, right? There's not always a professional involved. I think some of us just work with the families and the service coordinators, and other times we have the use of maybe like some of those behavior, the vendors. I think there's very few, but we used to use one all the time. Is anyone still using like another vendor to deal with?
There are some what are called BCBAs, behavioral professionals that are available, but most of those at this point are working with children who are on the autism spectrum disorder, because insurance companies are paying for that. So Regional Center is buying very little behavioral support for people, because much of it can be obtained generically for younger ages. Although there is some that is being done for adults. But if you're a level 4 facility, a behavior management plan has to be part of your
contract.
contract anyway. So it's something that you have to buy. So
Right.
there isn't a whole lot that's being.
And that's what we're doing. We are paying for that. I just know that it seems like 15 years ago, there was a whole lot of adults receiving behavioral support from companies like Holzenbeck and Associates and things like that. And I just don't see that anymore.
15 years ago, there was a very different administration at Regional Center
Yeah.
that had a very different philosophy about how services should be delivered.
Right. I'm not sure, it feels like we need to be advocating when that's appropriate, because not everybody is in a level 4 and above that requires that by contract. And I just see a lot of potential for people to get burnout and be given 30-day notices and things like that if we're not able to support them properly. So. All right, so creating individualized behavior goals, like I said when I went over the previous training, was we need to clearly define the specific behaviors that need to be addressed. These behaviors should be observable and measurable, making it easier to track progress. So the other part of that is we really have to get our DSPs together and say, this is the exact behavior we're looking for. Here's the tracking tools. We want to know when it occurs, how often it occurs, how long it lasts, things like that. So that, because it's not enough to do the little tally marks. We can't just tally mark and get an idea of what occurred. We really need, behavior reports. We need them to describe in detail what happened, how long it happened, and what happened before, what happened immediately after, and all of those things. Otherwise, the data is not useful. You're going to set measurable goals, develop clear and achievable goals related to behavior reduction and skill building. Goals should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. We call those SMART goals, right? With that, the thing that I want to focus on is the attainable part. It's not, we have this conversation in annual meetings when we're redoing the IPP as well. It would be unreasonable of me to try to set a goal for my individual who has intermittent explosive disorder and has behaviors multiple times a day. It would be unreasonable to say we would like this to be a goal of 0 times a week. It's not going to happen. Baby steps, right? We need to make it attainable, because in that person's mind, if it's too far out of reach, they've already failed before they've attempted to try, right? So attainable, very important. Strategies for behavior reduction. You're going to identify alternate behaviors that serve the same function as the challenging behavior, but are more socially appropriate. For instance, if an individual engages in self-injurious behavior to escape demands, a replacement behavior could be to teach them how to request a break. So maybe it's, their chore list. So maybe if they have 3 different chores they need to do on a Saturday morning, we could teach them to ask for a break after the completion of each chore, or even in the middle of it, whatever's appropriate for that individual. Antecedent strategies. Implement changes in the environment or routines to prevent the occurrence of challenging behaviors. This might involve modifying triggers or providing visual cues to communicate expectations. Teaching and skill building. Focus on teaching the individual new skills that can serve as alternatives to challenging behaviors. For example, teaching communication skills can reduce the need for problem behaviors to express needs. So even if an individual, and I get this all the time in DSP, what if they don't speak? They still communicate in some way, whether it's through a sign system, they have adaptive equipment, they may point, they may communicate through their body language. it doesn't matter what their mode of communication is, we can always teach a replacement behavior.
They might be communicating through their behavior
Exactly.
by throwing something at you.
Yes. I I have a nonverbal individual, and it's very rare that we see behavior of any kind, any negative behavior. But he's very happy, and he one day took the staff by the hand and walked over to his he has a bulletin board in his home and pointed at the schedule. And when he does that, the staff have grown to know that he's asking who's coming next, right? Who's on the shift next? So the staff read it, and he did this to his head. Nope. And he did this, like, she's got to go, right? And so the staff brought him to the office, and we showed him pictures. Do you like this staff? And he'd say, yeah. Do you like this one? And the one that he had said no to, he said no. And he did this to me. Got to go. And he doesn't speak at all. And he was able to tell me he doesn't want this person in his home. So I think that that says a lot about communication, right? It doesn't need to be spoken words. Strategies for skill building. Incorporate positive reinforcement. Was someone going to say something? Incorporate positive reinforcement strategies to encourage the use of desired behaviors. This can involve using the types of reinforcers mentioned in the previous training, like tangible reinforcers, something that they can touch, social reinforcement, going out into the community and participating in an activity or an event, right? Or different activity based in the home or on an individual level, right? I know some people really love, I have one individual who really loves to go and find DVDs. He has a DVD player. He loves to go to like even the Goodwill and find DVDs. He loves that, has a huge collection. So it doesn't always have to be, you know, something big or expensive. And I would recommend that we refrain from using food as a reinforcer. I know we do it, but we should not. Provide prompts or cues to remind and guide the individual to use desired behaviors. Gradually fade prompts as the individual becomes more proficient in using replacement behaviors. And all of these things sound so good on paper, but what do they really look like when you're trying to implement it? I know it's very challenging because you have staff that are, you know, we can tell them all the same thing, but they may interpret it differently. So how do you, what is the best way to get all of the staff monitoring the same, documenting the same? Any thoughts on that? Sorry, I'm trying to find who's unmuted also.
I think it's just training and retraining and retraining and reinforcing.
It does feel like that, for sure. Do you have like, Dana, do you at Mars, do you guys have like, when you have something like the behavior intervention plan, like what are the intervals, or are they different for everybody, like that you come together as a group and review the plan?
I think we come together as a group, and because each person's behavior is different, each person's
Right.
response. Yeah, you can't have a cookie cutter behavior plan.
Right, but what I'm saying is when someone does have a behavior plan, is it based on that individual? Like you may need to meet every 2 weeks, or you may need to meet once a month to talk about how things
Yes.
are going. It has to be, right? It has to be individualized. Because I mean, some people may have, you know, a specific one behavior that you're working on, and other people may have 4 or 5. It would have to be individualized, but at any rate, I think there has to be a definite plan in place for when the team is going to come back together and share what we've learned and decide how to move forward in the plan.
Hey, this is Dante. Just regards to that though, for some of my staff, we have behavior plans in place, but for some individuals, certain staff members can get individuals to do certain things. So yes, we can have a plan in place, but the plan might not work for me because I have a different way to approach that individual behavior because of who I am. So
Right.
we have behavior plans sometimes in place, but sometimes again, other staff members have their own way to address that individual, how that individual, responds to, that specific staff. So we could have behavior plans in place, but again, sometimes we can take a look at it, but as a staff member, how I utilize or how I address it, that behavior with the individual might be different from that plan because of who I am as a staff member.
Right. And I totally agree with you. The only thing I say to that, and because I am in the same situation with some of the individuals I support, what it comes back to though is treating, in my opinion, is most of the time. I know a lot of the time it's not this, but I know sometimes there's always an exception, but if we train people to treat the individual with dignity and respect, and if we're all doing that, we maybe all have a fairly equal shot at getting them to cooperate in this situation. Like, and when I have those situations, I want to know, like, what is it about this person that you don't like working with? Why? And if it's nothing, it's nothing. They may just have a preference, but what I have found is that usually it's like the way that the individual makes a request, right? Maybe it sounds more like a demand than a request. I don't know. I'm always just looking at why. Why am I successful and you're not, right? With this individual. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I agree, but again, it just depends on that individual.
It does. It really does. Yeah,
Because I
it
got
does.
somebody that might not like me because I'm a black guy. You
Right.
might got some guys, you know what I mean? So it depends on that individual preference. So again, it is coming back down to understanding who your individuals are and what their likes
Yeah.
and dislikes are. So behavior plans I mean, sometimes you do have to incorporate that in regards to staff. You don't want to staff it with someone that they don't like, and you got two black guys and you got four individuals, and you're gonna have behaviors all day.
Yeah, and
So-
it's really difficult in residential setting for sure, because 3 of those individuals may really like that staff and the one
Exactly.
may not. So
Right.
yeah, I know it's hard. Yeah.
So
I
it gets
know when I
tricky.
was a service coordinator, a client fired me because every time I saw him, I said hi to him. He didn't like that. And I'm like,
Oh,
"What?"
well, that's a funny reason to get fired. I know Rudy had his hand up. Go ahead, Rudy. He's been typing in the chat. He said some of the issues we are running into is that staff don't know the resident as they should. That is an issue. Go ahead, Rudy. What were you gonna say?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
You're kind of quiet.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Just
Okay.
try to speak up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, one of the main crucial factors is one, the training. We leave our training to other DSPs to train those other staff. As those other staff are coming in, or we have new staff coming in, well, I worked at this other group, and we don't do it this way, and so they come in with already a pretense of what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
At both of our homes, we try to have weekly meetings, about 30 minutes a week, usually on either Mondays or Tuesdays. Okay, everybody, let's get together. Let's see what happened over the weekend. What can we improve on this? But it's a mindset of also the upper echelon of management to make it a priority that we're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to repeat what you said. So Rudy was, if you couldn't hear him, was just saying that, in the 2 homes that he has there, they have weekly meetings with the staff to talk about maybe what happened over the weekend and what's going on with the residents. And I'm sorry, what was the rest? Go ahead.
Just to make sure that all the DSPs, supervisors, managers, administrators, that we're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely important to meet with your team to make sure everybody understands. And I think that even sometimes you can do it, and then somebody will be like, "Oh, I didn't catch that in the meeting." You're like, "What?"
Right.
Everybody else caught it. Yeah.
It gets difficult too, because a lot of times, when you have those plans in place and it works for a while, staff start to get complacent, and then you start having more behaviors again because of the staff getting complacent, or sometimes the behavior plan just needs to be changed because what they were doing before doesn't work any longer.
Right.
So again, a lot of it comes down to, just like you're saying, is knowing the individuals.
Yeah.
But also, and to Rudy's point, is we could train staff the same way, but again, it still really depends upon that individual. I mean, we could have the same approach, but how the individual takes it from that staff can be totally different from one staff member to the next.
Well,
So
you guys want to know my opinion, and I say this, and I know there's always going to be an exception, but if our rates were designed to pay people, I just have a major problem with the fact that a lot of in this industry, the individuals that work for us, the DSPs, could make more money going to work it in and out
that
than
part too.
providing care and supervision. And I think if our rates could support, I think that our employee base would be much different if we were paying $5 to $10 more an hour.
The legislature this last week just came up with a compromise for fast food industry, so that starting next April, the minimum salary for anybody working in fast food will be $20 an hour. So that's a concern. Even a bigger concern is 2 years ago, at the end of the fiscal year, which goes from July 1 to June 30th, the regional center system as a whole, so it's 21 regional centers, sent back to the state of California $1.5 billion with a B dollars in unused purchase of service dollars. Now, for the year that just ended on June 30th, the state is projecting another $1.5 billion being sent back to the state. Now, why can't that money, which has been allocated to regional centers, be used to adequately pay staff? I mean, what's the point of putting it into the budget and then not using it? Because you've made the rates so low that providers can't get staff, so they can't take in new clients, or choose not to provide the service because they can't afford it, and the clients don't get the service, and facilities. It's not uncommon to see a 40% turnover in facilities every year. So that means that if you have 10 people working for you, 4 of them left within the year.
Right. Yeah. It's really concerning. And I do really strongly feel that our employee base would be a lot different if we had higher rates. I do. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing. So also person-centered approaches and behavior intervention plans should align with the individual's preferences, interests, and strengths, incorporating activities and rewards that the individual will find motivating, increases the likelihood of success. Whenever possible, offering choices to the individual to enhance their sense of control and autonomy. Allowing them to make decisions within safe boundaries can reduce frustration and challenging behaviors. As part of my master's program, I'm in this statistics class, and I read this interesting article about individuals with developmental disabilities who have more choices in their life, and the correlation to injuries that are reported. And they kept the study really anonymous. They just said a state. It didn't say which state, and that they obtained the information from the Department of Developmental Services for that state. And over the period of time, I want to say it was like 3 years, I can't remember, but they found that individuals who had more choices in their lives had 35% less injuries. I think that's really interesting, right? 35, I would expect it to be much less than that, but yeah, 35%. And that's not, that's the people who are receiving more support and having less choices are getting hurt more frequently. Thought it was interesting. Okay, so the data collection for behavior intervention plans, you need to define the methods for collecting data on the individual's behavior and the effectiveness of the intervention strategy. So it's not enough to monitor when the behaviors are occurring. We also need to monitor how well our intervention services are. Like when the behavior happens, this is what we're doing, and how well is it working or not working. And this helps us to track the progress in order to make informed decisions and changes to the plan. Let me see who's. Okay. So for positive reinforcement and rewards, we already talked about some of the possibilities. Tangible reinforcers are like physical items or privileges that individuals find motivating. Examples include favorite like toys or games, access to electronics, special activities, and tangible reinforcers can be effective for individuals who are motivated by material rewards. Not all individuals are. I always use the example, if you try to motivate me with a coffee, like you're going to take me to Starbucks or Dutch Bros, that's not a reinforcer for me because I don't drink coffee. I don't like it. Same for the individuals we support. Social reinforcers involve interactions with others that are rewarding for the individual. This could be verbal praise, compliments, attention, high fives, fist bumps, things like that. That doesn't have to be some huge reward. It can be just verbal praise, letting them know that you're proud of their progress. And other social interactions. Social reinforcers are particularly effective for individuals who are socially motivated. If you have someone who doesn't like to be social, rewarding them with the social reinforcement is not likely to be successful. Let me see. Sorry, someone's chatting. Oh, it's Jeff. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I just put on there, the state has developed a training program for direct support professionals. And it is now through June of 2024. And anybody who takes the 2 modules, you have to be a direct support person. If you're just an administrator, you can't get the funding, and you have to a certain percentage, and then they'll be explaining all that tomorrow on this webinar. So, but anyone who does complete the training course will get a $1,300 stipend, $650 for each of the 2 seminars or series of seminars that they complete. So if you're interested in it all, I would encourage you to get on that webinar tomorrow to find out what's involved, and then subsequently sign up for the to take the training classes and be eligible to receive, if you are eligible to receive the stipend for this grant.
There's another one from Cal Grows as well, and you can earn up to $6,000. I can
Yeah.
send it to you. But yeah, there's another one. So there's 2 opportunities. I know I have several staff who have been signing up. So
Good.
love to see lots of people take advantage.
How did people hear about this?
But the one from the DDS, the stipend,
Yeah.
that went out as a memo to all regional centers about a week ago. And so I don't know.
I heard about both in August. So there was at our annual DSP recertification, they told us about the Cal Grows one and gave us the link. And then they said that this other one was coming. And like Jeff said, they just started circulating material about a week ago.
So what is an annual DSP certification?
It's for trainers. Like we have to go
Oh,
to
okay.
like several day training every year to get recertified. And so while I was there in the DDS building, that's where it's held, they gave us this information. But they gave us the Cal Grows information and told us this other one was coming, the one that just came out.
And where would you, is it calgrows.com or something like that?
.org. I can send you the link. I have a link specific to the page. I can send it to you.
Okay.
I'll send it to Irene also so she can send it out.
All right, thank you. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one wondering what you're talking about.
No, this is
Dana, you have to be doing a certain percentage of direct care to be able to be eligible for these.
I'm talking about for
staff. Yeah.
my staff or the
Okay, for your
staff.
staff, definitely.
Yeah.
Uh, The $1,300 one that the DDS has put out is it's just it's a stipend, but it is taxable, but it doesn't count as as part of the regular income. And that some providers have chosen to allow their staff to do it on staff time, and some are saying, no, if you want to do this, it's an extracurricular. You can get this money if you do it on your own time. So that's up to you how you want to do that. But here at Bakersfield ARC, we're doing it on staff time.
Yeah. All right. So activity-based reinforcers involve engaging in a preferred activity or task as a reward. If an individual enjoys drawing, playing a game, going for a walk, these activities could be used as positive reinforcement. Guidelines for using reinforcement effectively. Not all reinforcers are equal to everyone. We've already said that. Like, I don't like coffee, so that's not going to be reinforcing to me. Consistency. Reinforcement should be consistent and reliable. If a behavior is reinforced sometimes, but not others, the individual may become frustrated. Consistency helps the individual understand the relationship between their behavior and the reward. And so that is something that, of course, you have to work with your DSPs on to know when is the appropriate time to offer the reinforcement. Maybe is there a certain person who's responsible for offering this reinforcement, because everyone's plan is different. So we need to, all of the key players need to know what the plan is. Reinforcement should follow the desired behavior as closely as possible. The closer timing between the behavior and the reinforcement, meaning the desired behavior and the reinforcement, the stronger the association becomes, because they are able to relate the behavior to the reinforcement. Gradual fading. While initially it might be necessary to provide immediate reinforcement, over time reinforcement can be faded out because we're shaping this behavior, right? So we're not going to teach someone to button up their shirt, for example, and offer, high fives and fist bumps. And then 3 years later, we're not still going to be offering high fives and fist bumps. The reinforcement at that point becomes much more generic. Like, hey, Jeff, you look really nice. I see you got your shirt all buttoned up. You look really nice today. It's a more generic reinforcement. Variety. It's also beneficial to have a variety of reinforcers available to prevent satiation. Rotating through different reinforcers keeps motivation high. Make sure that reinforcement is contingent upon the desired behavior. In other words, the reward should only be given when the target behavior occurs. And pairing with natural rewards. Whenever possible, reinforce behaviors with rewards that naturally connect to the behavior's function. For instance, if an individual completes a task, the reward could be extra time for a preferred activity related to that task. And continuously assess the effectiveness of the chosen reinforcer. If a behavior is not improving or maintaining, it could be an indication that the reinforcer is not strong enough. Communication and collaboration. I don't know who that is. Let me see. Okay, I got it muted. Importance of open communication is that effective communication ensures that all team members, including family, caregivers, therapists, and staff, have a shared understanding of the individual's needs, goals, and challenges. When everyone is on the same page, there's a higher likelihood of consistent implementation of strategies across different situations and settings. For example, if someone goes to a day program, or they have employment in the community, everybody that supports that individual from across those different agencies needs to be part of the plan. They need to be aware of what the behavior that we're trying to target is, and if they see it, how they should respond to it. Because like we said earlier, if it's only happening at day program or only happening at home, there has to be something happening in those places that's reinforcing to the behavior. So sorry, you guys, my desk phone is ringing. Can you hit ignore on that, Ambra? Will that let you hit ignore? Sorry. I didn't realize it was that loud. It's okay. Consistent approach. When everyone is on the same page, there's a higher likelihood of consistent implementation. Oh, I already said that, so sorry. Adaptation. Open communication allows for timely adjustments to strategies based on progress, setbacks, and changing needs. And each team member brings a unique expertise to the table, whether it's related to the behavior analysis, therapy, medical care, or personal relationships. So using a multidisciplinary team approach would be helpful. Collaborating with professionals from different disciplines ensures that the individual receives well-rounded care that addresses various aspects of their well-being. And this that may help with kind of what Dante was saying too, about how it really depends on who you are sometimes. You know, seeing me every day may be off-putting to someone. If I'm always talking to the individual about their behavior, they may not want to deal with me in relation to their behavior, but they may respond better to one of the other professionals that are trying to come on board and be of assistance. A multidisciplinary team approach can develop a more comprehensive behavior intervention plan that considers all facets of the individual's life. Sharing insights from, oh my gosh, like functional behavior analysis and behavior intervention planning, or behavior intervention plans. Communicating the findings from the functional behavior assessment ensures that all team members understand the root causes of the challenging behavior, because that's the goal of the functional behavior assessment. We're trying to see what the root of the issue is. Were you going to say something, Jeff?
What's up?
I thought you were going to say something.
No, that's all right. I just, we
No,
need
we're
to wrap it up. Yeah.
wrapping it up. Oh my gosh.
Wrapping it up.
Hold on. Let me see what else we got here. I didn't even realize what time it was.
Yeah.
I told you guys I really did a thorough job of preparing this. That's why I didn't want to do it for two people. Okay, so this is still the communication, crisis prevention and management. You want to make sure that you can recognize signs of escalation, train your staff to recognize early signs of agitation. Can you guys mute, whoever's not muted, can you mute? Recognize early signs of agitation and frustration. I don't know who. Lena, please stay muted because we can hear you. So sorry. Their individual triggers. Make sure that as your staff recognize new triggers, they're bringing that to the table, or new challenging behaviors. We need to know when those things happen. And then the next part talks about de-escalation techniques. You guys all know what those are. Let me see. And then it talks about staff training and professional development. Provide staff with an understanding of the basic principles of positive behavior support and how they align with HCBS regulations. Educate your staff on behavior concepts like antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. We call those the ABCs, right, of behavior. Introduce staff to the concepts of functional behavior assessment and its role in developing the behavior intervention plan. Because it's really important that the staff understand. They may not get to see everything that's happening at the management level. That's why my suggestion is to involve those key personnel who deal with that individual, because if you let them see the process, they better understand it. I know when I walk my staff through with an actual book of this is when we got the referral, and then we did the assessment, and then we implemented services, and then we had a 30-day meeting, and now we're on a quarterly meeting schedule. They understand that concept so much better when I can show it to them and they can be involved in it. All right, I think that pretty much covers everything. There's nothing that we really left out, but I think that we really, this will all be published on the website, and you guys will be able, Irene will get a copy of the slides if you guys want them. But yeah, it just goes on and on. I know I did a really big job. So if you guys want these slides, you can reach out to Irene and she can get them to you. I don't mind that at all. But are there any questions?
Yeah, any questions? And then also today is you'll be eligible for an hour and a half of continuing education. If you send Irene the 3 things that you learned today, and she will get you out a continuing education certification. But are there any other questions that anybody has? A very thorough presentation today, Tamara. Go
Thank
ahead.
Irene, can you send out that information about the DSP stipend and the CalGrows when you have a chance?
Yes, I will send that out.
Yeah, I'll
And-
send it right now.
And then
The one for tomorrow is, I gave you the website. You can go ahead and sign up and attend. The DDS is having a training specifically for DSPs tomorrow on what's
okay,
involved.
I copied that.
Okay, good.
I'll text you the other one right now and I'll send it to Irene too.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.